Shalom, brothers and sisters. Shalom. Giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth. My name is Yeshaya Yisrael of the tribe of Dan of the nation of Israel. This particular presentation, I'm not going to say whether it will be long or not because I do not know. Nonetheless, brothers and sisters, it is in due respect that this presentation is done. In honor, first and foremost, of the Most High, the Creator and Maker of heaven and earth. Secondly, brothers and sisters, to the people who have subscribed to the channel, shared the video, left comments within it, it is definitely appreciated. So, brothers and sisters, don't see many people in the room, but nonetheless, I'm asking if I can be heard, type in a 1, brothers and sisters. If I can be heard, type in a 1. And we are going to start in this particular case. Okay. Shalom, Sister Taylor B. Let us start in this, brothers and sisters, and bring this out to the people for reasonable purposes. Now, what we are looking at here is a matter of a painting that was by a guy named Pointner. And I'm going to type the guy's name in there. P-O Pointner. And this was made, brothers and sisters, back in the 17th century. Pardon me, in the 19th century. And the theme of it is Israel and Egypt. What we want to point out, brothers and sisters, is that they knew how the Israelites looked that were in Egypt. It was not a mystery to them. You understand? So let us continue, brothers and sisters, into this. I'm asking people to get their pens, their pencils, their papers, their pads, and take notes. What we're seeing right here, we're going to show with the Hebrew, with the laser pointer. This says Lamate Gad, which means of the tribe of Gad. This here says Lamate Dan, meaning of the tribe of Dan, Dan and Gad. In 1528, Rabbi Abraham ben Eliezer Halevi reported that the tribes of Dan and Gad were living in Ethiopia. In 1542, Rabbi Moses Basola of Ancona went on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. When he arrived in Beirut, he met 4 Jews from Babylonia. One named Moses stated to Basola, he heard of Arabs who had seen it with their own eyes that there was indeed such a thing as the Symbatian River, and that the, quote, sons of Moses, quote, inhabited it, quote, without a doubt, quote. So what we want to point out right there, brothers and sisters, is that according to the source that I got this from, is written by a guy named Tudor Prophet. He's a French dude who, brothers and sisters, basically goes around speaking upon how the Israelites were people who migrated into Africa. And in his book, written again by Tudor Prophet, in his book, he stated this right here. In 1528, Rabbi Eliezer ben Levi reported that the tribes of Dan and Gad were living in Ethiopia. Ethiopia, we know, is in East Africa. All right. So that's something we want to point out, brothers and sisters, for edification purposes, if we will. Let's go on, please, into the next slide. Dan in West Africa. What we're looking at right here, brothers and sisters, in the green part, with that laser pointer there, what it says is this. Can we say that the ancient tribe of Dan of the Israelites carried that name with them when traveling to Western Africa? Dan in the Bible was known for making idols, as does Dan people in Western Africa. We want to point out that Dan were known as they who migrated to parts for peace, though they themselves were not always about peace. What am I pointing out? That in the Bible, the biblical tribe of Dan, of whom I claim descent from, brothers and sisters, it is generally stated that when Jeroboam came to the throne, that the tribe of Dan left, in many cases, in part, the land of Israel and migrated to Ethiopia, then migrated west and formed a kingdom called Danomi. I'm going to type that in for edification purposes. All right, Dan Nomi. Now, we've been talking consistently on this channel about the Beta Israel, the so-called Falashas, but they themselves are not the only people, brothers and sisters, that actually stayed in Ethiopia that they are of the house of Israel. According to the book Lost Jews, Last of the Ethiopian Falashas, written by the guy Louis Rappaport, there are other people in current Ethiopia that also lay claim to being part of the house of Israel. So we want to point out that throughout Eastern and even Western Africa, there are communities of people that lay claim to being of the house of Israel. So when the Bible speaks about Israel being scattered throughout the countries, it's not too hard to figure out what countries the Israelites went to. Now let's look at this map right here. When we see where the laser pointer is, I'm going to, for edification purposes, if we will, show with the pen and circle it. In this particular map here, they show, brothers and sisters, what is the Sinai Peninsula. And why, brothers and sisters, does that become important? Is because in speaking upon this matter, the Bible in Ezekiel chapter 20 says that the Most High will plead with Israel like he pleaded with Israel in the wilderness of Egypt. What is the wilderness of Egypt, brothers and sisters, where the Most High pleaded with the ancestors of the house of Israel outside of the Sinai Peninsula? The Philistines, brothers and sisters, descend from the ancient Egyptians. The Bible in Exodus 13 says that the Most High did not lead the Israelites by the way of the Philistines, at least the Israelites saw war. So the travel after the Exodus, brothers and sisters, was through the center, not the southern per se, and certainly not the northern part of the Sinai Peninsula. The Egyptians had garrisons, if you want to call them that, throughout the northern part of the Sinai Peninsula. So it would make sense when the Exodus happened for the Israelites to be led in a different direction. So these are just things, brothers and sisters, we want to point out for edification purposes. Next slide. The matter of Dan in West Africa. Now, let's read. Dan, an ethno-linguistic grouping of people inhabiting the mountainous west central Côte de l'Ouvre pardon me if I mispronounced it, and adjacent areas of Liberia. Liberia is in Western Africa of today. The Dan belonged to the southern branch of the Mende linguistic subgroup of the Niger-Congo language family. The Gio or Dan peoples is an ethnic group in northeastern Liberia and in Cote d'Ivoire. Again, pardon me if I mispronounce. There are approximately 350,000 members of the group, united by the Dan language and Mende language. Dan, also known as Gio or Yakuba, an ethno-linguistic grouping of people inhabiting the mountainous west central Cote d'Ivoire, pardon me if I mispronounced again, and adjacent areas of Liberia. The Dan belong to the southern branch of the Mende linguistic subgroup of the Niger-Congo language family. They originated somewhere to the west or northwest of their present lands, perhaps among the Malinke / Mandingo. The Dan are closely related to the Gere, also spelled Ngere or Gurere to the south. So, brothers and sisters, what we're looking at and what we're talking about in this particular case is nonetheless about the people in Liberia, in Western Africa, who hold on to the name of Dan. In the book that I wrote, From Assyria to America, Part 2, I state in part that there is very strong reasonability to state that in Ruach, or in spirit, if nothing else, that the people, knowing their roots go back to ancient Israel, we can see why the word is called Yakuba. Yakub, even in Arabic, means Jacob. Jacob is Israel. So it's not, brothers and sisters, too far-fetched in saying this kind of matter. One of the things to point out, as the brother Zion Lex pointed out, is that many tribes in Africa, Western Africa, brothers and sisters, don't date back to the matter of 1800, 17 or 1600 something BCE. So in many cases, they migrated from another place to where they are now. In a video that I did called Simeon and Dan, which is on another channel. Pardon me, I felt I needed something to drink. That is discussed for edification purposes. All right. So, what we want to do, brothers and sisters, if I can be heard, please type in a 1. Thank you. If I can be heard, please type in a 1. And let's continue in this. It goes on to say, the Dame or Dagme claim to be descendants of the Israeli tribes of Gad and Dan, God Dangme. And if so, no wonder that on their way to Ghana, they passed through Nigeria, where the Igbo, who are predominantly descendants of Gad, but have among them other tribes of Israel, such as Dan, Judah, Levi, Zebulun, etc. Shalom, Bathsheba, Shalom, Tel Aviv. God Agme's oral history state that they came from Israel about or around the 6th century BC through Egypt to Ethiopia by the Assyrians. Now, the 6th century BCE, brothers and sisters, if we will, we're talking, correct me if I'm wrong, 700 something BCE. If that's the case, then Assyria is still at the height of their power before they lose to Babylon. So it's important to understand these ancient nations and these ancient kingdoms. If I can be heard, please type in a 1. these ancient nations and these ancient kingdoms and what happened historically in this particular manner. While in Ethiopia, they occupied the Gondar province in the north. The Assyrians attacked them there. The Assyrians attacked them there with force, which forced them to Sudan south and then on to Niger, proceeding to Nigeria, possibly because they knew or had heard of their relatives Gad through his son Eri, who founded the Eri and Inuri kingdoms. So, what are we pointing out, brothers and sisters? All right, in this particular case, and that is oral history of the people, of the God people, in parts that they come from the descendants of Gad. See, this is why it was important before I went to the black people in Western Africa saying it, no disrespect intended, having to use a rabbi, Abraham ben Eliezer Halevi, reported that the tribes of Dan and Gad were living in Ethiopia. So while we went over that first citation, then I wanted to go over from other sources that speak upon this particular matter. From Nigeria, they have said to have settled in Dahomey, then Togo. From Hutsi, Togo, they went along the eastern bank of the Volta Jor River, crossed between Old Kapong and Akuse, if I mispronounced, correct me, and stayed for a time on the plains of Taglogo until approximately 1200 AD, which they then migrated to the plains between Lolovor and the Osun Doku Hills. What am I pointing out, brothers and sisters, is this. Israel was a migrating people. When we read, for instance, in Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, there shall be no rest for the sole of your foot. And then we begin to see about all the travels of this tribe, that migration, this person being scattered. You have Eldad the Danite that was also spoken upon by the brother Zion Lex, a good friend of mine. All right, going into all of these particular matters and going into the scattering and the dispersing of the house of Israel, this is what we want to talk about. Now, while people do, and I have actually taken, for what it's worth, that DNA test. I did that, let me see, my daughter's 15. I did that about, say, maybe 13 or so years ago when my daughter was 2. And like, when I took the DNA test, right, it said that I am over 50% from the Fula people. Now, Fula is Fulani. Not planning to play on words. The word pe'ula in Hebrew. I want to state this. All right. Pe'ula in Hebrew means work. All right. Pe'ula. Like the Fulani people, if we were to say it were to have a Hebraic connotation, you will get, brothers and sisters, for all intents and purposes, the word pa'al, which is the Hebrew word for verb, which also means to act, ACT, which also means to work, because a verb is an action word. But that may be pulling for straws, as some may say. Nonetheless, brothers and sisters, we get right here when you read about the Gadagme people, which has actually one time mentioned in the George Jefferson show called The Jeffersons, about the Dogme people, for those who are very familiar with that show, about where some of our ancestors came from. When Assyria fell to Babylon, according to people, may he rest in peace, such as that as Ben Ami, stated that they migrated into northern parts of Africa. We already know brothers and sisters, about the history of the people of Carthage. We went over that in this series of presentations. So when we go over this, not trying to be funny for quote unquote for free, there are people who want to sit there and charge X amount, and that's their prerogative. On the Shabbat, I do not do the matter of trying to charge nor get what they call a super chat or something of that kind of nature. You know, not being funny. This is why you don't see me advertising the books on the Shabbat like that. But I will say concerning the books written, thanking the Most High, that the kind of information we go over goes over it, but much more deeper too. Okay, so now let's look at this, as this is called about Israel and archaeology, right? This is found in ancient Israel. Of Abiyah, servant of Uzziah. What you see here is Uzziah on this bula. A bula, you can look it up yourself if you want, but essentially, what a bula is, brothers and sisters, is a rock or hard sediment matter that has an inscription within it, if we will. All right. So, of Abiyah, servant of Uzziah, what we're seeing right here is the Ayin, Zion, Yod, Wow, Uzziah. What we're seeing here is the Lamed, the Aleph, the Bet, the Yod, and the Wow. The Ayin, the Bet, and the Dalet. Excuse me. Lamed meaning of, in this case, or two or four, depends on how you want to look at it. Abiyah, Ebed, Uzziah. So we just want to show this and show of the ancient Hebraic matter in archaeology. Let's go on, if you will, to the next slide. Of Shabaniah, servant of Uzziah. Now, what you're seeing right here is the exact same thing. The Lamed, the Sheen, the Bet, the Noon, the Yod, and the Wow. Lamed meaning 2 or 4, for those following where the laser pointer is going. The Sheen, this is what they call ancient Hebrew. All right. The Bet, the Noon. Of Shabaniah, servant of Uzziah. Now, Uzziah, for those who do know, was one of the kings of ancient Judah after the divided monarchy. So when you start talking about the matter, brothers and sisters, of the division of the kingdom, you had Rehoboam in the south and Jeroboam in the north. The timing of Uzziah is the same timing as the prophets Hosea and later on the prophet Isaiah. On this channel, we went over a biblical timeline, which, not trying to speak too much, next week during this presentation, we're going to go over a timeline as well, because it's been requested. What we want to go over next week is the timeline between Samuel to Ezra. That's the portion for next week, all right, for those subscribing to the channel. All right, but I'm just want to drop that right there for edification purposes. All right. So when we begin to sit there and see what we're looking at, what we're talking about, the matter, say, of the Hebrew in this particular matter, when they start to ask us, oh, can you show us anything before the matter of what happened with King Herod? Yeah, things such as this. Shabaniah, servant of Uzziah, seal. There was seals, just like if you go in some of the magazine shops of today, they got a magazine called Coins. All right. There is a coin that, not trying to drop or go too further, I intend, created willing, to write a book. And the book is going to be called Slavery 1619, the Cherished Date. In that, I want to show, according to the research I've done, the different coins from the kings of Spain and the kings of Britain, where they all sat there between Spain and England, celebrated in the slave trade, because you're not going to, brothers and sisters, attempt to state that we were already here, quote, in America, and therefore, though some black people were here, doesn't make it was us. There's black people in New Zealand. There was black people in Ireland called the Grimaldi's. That doesn't mean that's us over here in the United States of today either. So what we want to point out, brothers and sisters, is the whole earth at one time was all what you call black. You understand? But what we are saying as Israel is that our people, of whom we're talking about, have a specific line. And that line goes back to the house of Israel. And these are the reasons why you see these particular teachings being brought out. That is why it does not behoove, I state again, it does not behoove Israelites, knowing that the people were dispersed. When a brother or sister, a said identified black man or black woman, were to say that the Egyptian, they just really perhaps can be. Israelites and Egyptians was mistaken for one another. When some brothers or sisters are saying or said to be brothers and sisters among black people that they are Moabites, they may be. I can't prove or disprove it. But what we do on this channel and what we do, brothers and sisters, is attempt to the best of our ability to bring out our truth and let it resonate on the spirit that it can resonate upon on. And if it be the will of Elohim, the will of the Most High, to open up the eyes of the true house of Israel, to let us know who we are, brothers and sisters. The sister Tellaby wrote, "We were everywhere in every region." This is very, very true. Did you know, not jumping a gun, in the book that I wrote, and I want to show it, but not for sale purposes. In the book, brothers and sisters, let me get it from back here. Sorry. From Assyria to America. In this book here. In this book, brothers and sisters, I spoke about how Amerigo Vespucci spoke about the black people that was here when he came to the Western Hemisphere. In the book that I wrote, From Assyria to America, Part 2, I showed the pictures of the Indians, quote unquote, that was in, brothers and sisters, the West Indies that Columbus saw that looked blacker than me. I cite, brothers and sisters, how the people of Pizarro and Cortez and Balboa and those kind of people spoke about the black people wherever they went to in this world. The children of Israel was one of the several black nations of the ancient world. Do we belong to that? Let's see as we go along, because we've been talking about Deuteronomy 28. Brothers and sisters, we not trying to be salesmen, even wrote a book on Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter. See? And so looking upon it in this particular case, we want to sit there and not be tunnel vision or closed-minded in a particular matter in presentation. In the beginning of this presentations, and you can go on it from 0 to 20 of 100 slides and 20 to 40 of 100 slides, I showed how the Aztecs look. Same complexion as I. And darker. And brothers and sisters, you can get the book Egypt by Lorna Oakes, where they showed Ramses being as black as Wesley Snipes. So we already got it covered about the melanated, if we will, once it comes down to that particular case, and so forth and so on. I want to continue on. Let's continue into the next slide. All right. I have shown this particular one in a situation before, right? But let's look at this, if we will, right? And I think the people who have joined on in this. Of Ahaz, son of Jotam, king of Judah. La'akas. Melech Yahuda. Jotam was the son of Uzziah. Uzziah is the same Uzziah that we see upon the seal there, that we see upon spoken of in here, Uzziah. Now, mind you, Uzziah means strength of Yah, or Yah is my strength. Akaz means he has grass. Akaz Yah, meaning Yah has grass. Son of Yotam. Yotam means God is perfect. And we know Judah is let God be praised. Yahudah. So looking at it in this is the same thing just shown in a different aspect. This is what you call a bula, as been pointed out before. So we want to point this out for archaeology purposes, because a lot of times people say, oh, Israelites only deal with the Bible. They don't show nothing. I remember one time, not to be disrespectful to a brother, a black man who was inside, I guess, the Kemetic understanding, was basically saying a curse word about Zion, like Mount Zion. These Israelites don't show bleep bleep. Somebody may have not read From Babylon and Timbuktu and then did studies. Somebody may have not read the book, brothers and sisters, Israelites and Jews, a significant difference. Some people may have not read, brothers and sisters, History of Edom and Khazaria. Those books are available. Israelites have been putting work in for our purpose, and let this truth come out to the world. Next slide. From Ahaz to Hezekiah and the Assyrians, I received tributes from Jehoahaz of Judah, Tiglath-Pileser III in the 8th century BCE. All right. In the 8th century BCE, that means it's 700 something BCE. So, brothers and sisters, upon that very quick correction, when it said the 6th century here, that wasn't something 700 something, that was 500 something BCE in that particular case when you're doing the BCE years. All right. But now, nonetheless, I don't mind constructive criticism. Tiglath-Pileser reigned according to the timeline from 745 all the way to 727 BCE. And what we see written here in cuneiform is Hezekiah of Judah. Now, Tiglath-Pileser didn't speak about Hezekiah, but Tiglath-Pileser's successor, his eventual successor, Sennacherib, did in the Sennacherib War. We went over that statement 2 weeks ago, because last week we were dealing with Passover, so there was no presentation. But the week before that, we did go over the Hezekiah Prism, which is inside of a museum. So when they say they don't see anything about Israelites in museums, you may want to go to the Heck Museum. You may want to go to the Jerusalem Museum. You may want to go to the museum in the Netherlands or the London Museum. You may want to sit there and get a passport, and fly somewhere or travel. I said a passport. Don't just depend on somebody on Pal Talk or Facebook Live or doing the live, StreamYarding. Get a passport and fly somewhere and go and do some research if it's up to you. You can tell the person who studies, and you can tell the person who sits back to look for an argument. There's a difference in spirit with that. And I don't mean no disrespect. The brothers, the males, who just look to debate on Facebook or otherwise. You notice something common about those guys? They don't have a woman. Now, this is not to take away from archaeology or history, but the history has shown men who are on the internet, Facebook or otherwise, who just post after post, Instagram comment after Instagram comment, who just look to debate and debate and debate. If you have the time and go through their pictures, you never see them with their honey or their lady or their spouse or their significant other. When and this is not to get sidetracked, when the Most High said it's not good for man to be alone, if the Creator who created heavens and earth, and at the end of Genesis chapter 1 says it's very good, The one thing that was not good was man being alone. When you go even into the movie, though it's Hollywood, Sugar Hill, what did the guy say to his brother, Wesley Snipes playing Romeo in that? He said, I don't even have a honey like you got, before he committed suicide in that movie, Sugar Hill. A man without a woman in the book of the Apocrypha, it says he just goes with no kind of direction. A woman or an Isha in a man's life helps stabilize him. You can tell the difference because they got too much time on their hands. They ain't taking their lady out to the airport, to a movie, to dinner, to this, to that, because they're too busy trying to debate with other dudes. So you can tell the difference between the presenter and the debater in spirit. The men who are like that are single, single, a thing that is not good. So let's go on, because Hezekiah, he wasn't single, he had a wife, but let's go on into the next tier. Sennacherib and Hezekiah. Sennacherib, king of the world, king of Assyria, seated himself upon the throne, and the prisoners of Lachish marched before him. No one among them had set his mind or given thought to widening the site of the city, to building a wall, to straightening the streets, to digging canals or planting orchards. Nor had anyone considered applying his skill to the palace therein. But I, Sennacherib, king of the world, king of Assyria, it came into my mind to perform that task. So what's being stated, brothers and sisters? Sennacherib was the one who also went against the Egyptians, for those who do know that history. Sennacherib, in today's terminology, without using profanity, will be called one who likes to talk a lot of stuff. He boasted quite often upon his stuff. And what he did, I, Sennacherib, the king of the world, the king of Assyria, because according to them, Assyria was the world. And in their heyday, they were the rulers of the world until, the Lydians and, the Medes and, the Babylonians came and smashed them. And it was done. Ashur-unabat-palit was like their last king, and Assyria also, like we've been pointing out, fell from within as well. Like Rome fell from within. Like a lot of organizations fall from within. Those who know where I'm going know what I was just talking about. A lot of organizations, like a lot of the kingdoms, Assyrian, Egyptian, Roman, or otherwise, fell from within. It wasn't no outsider that did that. It was inward. Let's go on, if you will, to the next part. All right. Jerahmeel, son of Jehoiakim. Now, belonging to Jerahmeel, king, the king's son. Jeremiah 36. And this is shown written out. The Lamed, the Yod, the Resh, the Ket, the Mem, the Aleph, the Lamed. Yerachmiel is really how you will pronounce that. Dating brothers and sisters to 605 BC or BCE. Jehoiakim's son. Jehoiakim, brothers and sisters, was, for all intents and purposes, a descendant of King David, through Josiah, his father. Did you know that when I say secular Israelite history, that is to say Josephus is not in the Bible, that, well, it is in the book of Daniel, and is correlated with secular Israelite history in Josephus, that Nebuchadnezzar attacked Jerusalem one time that the book of Kings doesn't talk about, and took Jehoiakim and slew him. So we just want to point this out for edification purposes, if we will. All right. Next part, please. Berachiah, the son of Neriah, Jeremiah's time. What we're looking at here again is called a Bula. All right, Bula. And this is in, brothers and sisters, archaeology. You can look this up. All right. Berachiah means either one or two things. Barak means to bless. So Berak means a blessing. Barak Yah has blessed. Or it can mean from the word Barak, meaning to kneel, like you're kneeling down. All right. So, because berek, brothers and sisters, means the word knee, like the knee that's attached into your leg or to your leg. So, we just want to point this out for edification purposes. So, as we look with the laser pointer, you got the lamed here, the bet, the resh. It's chet, yod, and hey. Lip rakya to Barakya, the son of Neriah. Now, Neriah and all of this was during the era of the time of Jeremiah, when the northern kingdom already had fallen and the southern kingdom was already still there. Creator willing, come May 1st, this coming May 1st, a brother named Hanok Israel and myself on this channel will present a matter talking about, we ask people to subscribe, the 12 tribe chart, the mattering of scattering, what is Aseret that is mentioned in the book of the Apocrypha, what is Eldad the Danite talking about, things of that kind of nature, what happened between the crux of Assyria, the Israelites, Judah, Babylon, and Assyria, and then Babylon, Assyria, and Judah. All of that has to be culminated because we read in Jeremiah chapter 30, pardon me, Jeremiah chapter 50 about Assyria and Babylon and Judah and Israel. That is in the conclusion of Jeremiah's prophecy in Jeremiah chapter 50. So we want to emphasize Israel dealt with news reporters and prophets, not puppeteers and naysayers. This is why you don't find a book called Dathan in the scriptures. That's why Hananiah, the fourth prophet in the time of Jeremiah, does not have a book of his own. Israel dealt with news reports and prophets, not puppeteers and people who are naysayers. And Israel today deals with, no disrespect intended, naysayers. You know, the people who say that happened because of this. The Most High spoke about that kind of spirit in Jeremiah, where it says, I have not sent them, yet they ran. I have not spoken to them, yet they prophesied. If the Most High did not tell you why something happened, don't say that Yah caused it, because you could be lying upon the Most High. I state again, if the Most High did not deal with you like a prophet or prophetess and state this is why such and such happened, you should not be so comfortable to say this is why that happened. A wise person knows when to be silent on a matter. See something happen, and if you understand it to be that but can't prove it, then you don't do that example that you said happened to that person. As opposed to trying to say and put Yah's name in it, and thereby, hopefully, you're not bearing false witness against your brother or sister, and ultimately, you're hopefully not taking the Most High's name in vain. It is that serious. So, brothers and sisters, getting back, if we will, into this particular matter, shout out to the brother Uziel Yisrael. Shout out to Taylor B. Shout out to Bathsheba. Shout out to my brother, my friend, for over 20 years, if I may say, my brother Jared. All right. And let us continue on in this particular part. Abdi, servant Hosea. I actually put this in one of my books as a reference in archaeology. All right. So what you're seeing again is the Lamed. Then you have the Ayin, the Bet, the Dalit, the Yod. La Abdi, Ebed, Ayin, Bet, Dalit, Hosea. The Hey, the Wow, the Sheen, and the Ayin. So we just want to point this out about the matter of ancient Hebrew writing. Now let's understand the word paleo is from the Greek word meaning ancient. That's it. Paleo Hebrew is nothing but just saying paleo, the Greek word for ancient Hebrew. That's it. Just as much as the word for ancient in Hebrew is the word atik, spelled with an ayin, a tau, a yod, and a kuf. Atik means ancient in Hebrew. Well, paleo in Greek means ancient. That's it. It's nothing more deeper than that. Let's go on, if you will, to the next part. Thank you. Tishema, servant of Jeroboam. This is a famous archaeological find. All right. And we want to point out again, we see here the Lamed, Sheen Mem, Ayin. The Shema, to Shema, the Ayin, the Bet, the Dalit, Ebed, from meaning servant, from Abad, which means to work, Yerab-am, the Yod, the Resh, the Bet, the Ayin, and the Mem. So we can see, brothers and sisters, archaeology speaking upon ancient Israel. These are things you can look up. So when I title this in part, Brothers About Archaeology and History, and I leave my number 908-587-4841, you can't, as been pointing out, call yourself a Moray. And I remember, no disrespect, and some people may know what I'm talking about. I went to visit a camp once, and after being called Moray, and Moray, they said Moray, and I turned. They said, no, not here. I was like, oh, my bad. But my point nonetheless is the understanding of being called such and accepting such means a lot. So you got to sit there and make yourself and embed a servant to the people. Keep your phone on. Answer your brothers and sisters. And when they tell you something in confidence, be like it says in Proverbs and know when to keep your mouth shut. Next part, please. All right. Let's let the book speak for itself. We're going to go over a couple more slides with the time allotted, and then we're going to close out. Let's look at this right here. Lux soap won't shrink wool. Won't shrink wool. Now, this is a picture of an older black lady, and this is a picture of a black person being washed with Lux soap. And so when it says it won't shrink wool, that's what it's talking about, the person's hair. So let's see what the good book in the prophet Daniel, Daniel, the servant of the Most High, the prophet. Let's see what he said, and let's see how we can correlate it to this silly statement about won't shrink wool, what they didn't expect people to make one and two connections, because remember, Weeds was not supposed to read. So let's go on and see what it says and close out. I beheld till thrones were placed, and one that was ancient of days did sit. His raiment was as white snow, and the hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was fiery flames and a wheel of burning fire. Let's look at that right there, because it distinctly says in Daniel chapter 7 about an anthropomorphic image of the Most High. What that means is we giving human attributes to the Creator. We do it, the eyes of God, the ears of God, the hand of God, the nose of God. We do that because we're humans. So we think that if the Most High were to be seen, it will be seen like that of us. His hand, his arm, his finger. And so this is another example of such. So when it speaks upon, it says, and the hair of his head like pure wool. So when we look at who even in their racist comment of the United States, who has hair like wool, who do we see but us? Now that's some archaeology for you. Giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator and the maker of heaven and earth. We're going to, brothers and sisters, close out with the time allotted. I ask you to subscribe to this channel. I ask you to tune in, brothers and sisters, please, to what will be presented next time. And what do I mean by that when I say next time is this. I want to show something, say in the comments. All right, Shalom. Hebrew class, as those who are following, will no longer be on this particular channel. It will be, brothers and sisters, on the channel Moray Yeshaya Hebrew Lessons. It's a YouTube channel. You can look it up. I ask everyone to please subscribe to the channel. That will be where from tomorrow and on the future Hebrew classes would be. It's a different channel than this. Nonetheless, to maintain some kind of order and presentations, I want to keep the Hebrew classes on the Hebrew channel on YouTube and keep the Sabbath classes as we go over this kind of matter on this particular channel. All right. Giving honor and praise unto the Most High, creator, maker of heaven and earth. I can be reached at 908-587-4841. All right. Subscribe, like, comment, hit me up, call me, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger. My Facebook name is this, Ishaya Author Danite on Facebook. That's my Facebook name. On Instagram, it is Yeshaya and author. So my contact information is out there. I hope and pray you all have a blessed week, a good Sabbath, Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat Tob. Most High bless. Shalom.